Hey, everybody, and welcome to the strategy session. It's going to be a light night tonight because Stuart and I are solo. Joe is in transit, and Reed is, as they say in the Deep South, sick as a damn dog. He will be back with us in the next day or two, as will Joe for next week. Hopefully, Reed will be bouncing around as Reed tends to do. He is a robust and healthy guy, so he will be back with us soon. Um, Listen, folks, I wanted to start out before we start talking about CPAC tonight. I want to thank Stuart for being on. Before we start talking about CPAC tonight, I wanted to just walk through a little something that I tweeted about last night um, because this Fox News story rattled my chain so hard last night that I felt like it was important to sort of walk through for people just what level of pure, mendacious bullshit exists in the Trump world and in the Fox world, and how profoundly deceptive these people are. Now, since I'm old, I'm going to lean back a little bit so my progressive lenses can read my tweets, but here they are. So the Dominion lawsuit depositions from Rupert Murdoch and Fox News are lighting up the internet tonight. And there's a true frenzy over the revelations that the entire network, even the performative Nightside trio of terror, they knew Trump lost. They knew there was not then, nor is there now, a scintilla of fraud. They knew and lied over and over and over. They chose guests they knew were lying. They allowed story meetings promoting a massive, dangerous lie that reduced faith and belief in the American system. The entire top level of Fox management knew their lies were leading to danger for this nation. Just as the GOP once ruled the base, and now the base rules the GOP, a slavering, inchoate rage beast demanding more and more, so too is Fox owned by its base. Rupert and Roger's machine ran off the rails, and they fear their audience will follow the conspiracy crack at OAN or Newsmax or some damn Telegram channel. They knew the lies were lies. They fed and fed the beast. The Fox audience is, let's be honest, unsophisticated. They're addicted to hot women with great hair, big tits, and degrees from cheap J schools, as Roger used to say, and ragey bros telling them that their hatred of immigrants, blacks, gays, reading, and ideas is logical. The question the Fox audience should ask, but won't, is what else is behind the curtain? What else is a lie? What else do they say about us off camera? Here's your answer. It's all a lie. It's all performative. The entire thing is a big, loud, dumb performance piece. They're lying about Ukraine, about Biden at scale, about all the catalog of imaginary culture war demons. Tonight on Tucker, will trans Tifa terrorist drag queens force your kids into gay Sharia marriage veganism? This is Rupert and Roger's model at its end state. A seething, metastasizing cancer consuming the minds of millions of Americans, convinced by the cynical playhouse of a network of liars, arsonists, and enablers. Dominion called their BS. Fox will lose. They'll settle and offer a fat check and an elliptical apology. If their viewers had the slightest curiosity, they'd start asking what Fox is lying about to them now and tomorrow and the next day. Because one thing is certain, the lies will continue. So with that, I'm going to flip back over to the screen where I can see my friend Stuart and welcome everybody again to the show and say that I feel like, Stuart, this Fox story is one of the more consequential things that we have not been. We knew this was coming. We knew Claire
Yep.
Locke, the defamation firm, was very talented. We knew they were going to bring this case. We knew there'd been depositions. Even I, and I'm a cynical guy, I did not imagine we were going to have this level of revelation.
Well, look, brother, since you started reading, I'm going to read a famous quote by Solzhenitsyn, because this is so like the Soviet Union, which it's so like Putin, which is now they're in love with. And it's this sort of union of that. This famous quote by Solzhenitsyn: we know they are lying. They know they are lying. They know we know they are lying. We know they know we know they are lying. But they still lie.
Right.
And that, I mean, think about Chernobyl. And basically what happened at Chernobyl is what happened at Fox. They know that they're lying. They're saying this. And it's, look, this is how you destroy a democracy, because
It really,
what, they're voting is all about trust. You have to
sure,
believe that your vote counts, that somebody else's vote counts. You have to be willing to lose,
right?
and once you start doubting the whole system, the whole thing can collapse. And Rick, I mean, you're a student of the Soviet Union. I mean, from the Bolshevik days, one of their
Hmm.
major goals is to say that democracy is a fraud.
Correct.
That America isn't really a great democracy.
Right.
They got a lot of fellow travelers to come over in the late 20s and the 30s that would echo this
Hmm.
line. And now, I mean, what blows my mind, the party goes that we used to belong to. The party goes from Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, to being for Putin, being the party that wants to cut off aid to Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, and look, they are assertively doing it now, Stuart, and that question of the lie being the center of everything they do. I mean, we should have known it during Trump's administration when he lied 30,000 times in 4 years. But the lie being the center of everything they do, it speaks to the culture at Fox, the business model at Fox, the Republican audience's gullibility for Fox. But it also brings us over to CPAC, which is happening this week in Washington. And you and I are old enough to know and remember the days when CPAC had been a place where Ronald Reagan, in their inaugural meeting in '74, went out and gave a ringing speech about democracy and about freedom and about liberty and about America and the Constitution. And man, it is a really different place these days.
Yeah, I mean, that really sums it up. The walk from Ronald Reagan to Marjorie Taylor Greene, from Ronald Reagan to Viktor Orban, and
Right.
you use the phrase, what is it, authoritarian friendly?
Yes. Authoritarian curious.
Authoritarian curious. Yeah, that's better. But if you just think about this logically, no, there is no need for an authoritarian government if democracy is working.
Right.
It has to be seen as failing. So if you go back, to me, there's a real shift in Fox. Um, Roger was one of us.
Yeah.
He was a guy. He was a guy that was in the persuade. He was in the propaganda business. We were in the
Sure.
propaganda business, but it was within the framework of the American political dialogue. It was
No
conservative
question.
versus liberal,
Hmm.
and that continued through really the end of Bush's second term, and then
Yeah.
in the Obama years. And we can talk about why, but in the Obama years, there was this fundamental switch that America had failed, so
Right.
therefore democracy was failing. And with Trump, what is birtherism but a attack on democracy, because it means you have an illegal president.
Hmm.
So the only legal president that they think we've had since George Bush is Donald Trump.
It really is. It really is. I mean, that Tea Party era had this, and I think the tone of CPAC and the tone of a lot of the Republican leadership now, it is fundamentally pessimistic about America. We're
Oh
doomed.
yeah,
We're surrounded. Our society is collapsed. It's corrupt. We're mysterious forces are tearing down our family unit. The masked Antifa are an army in our country attacking us. All these sort of pessimistic things. I mean, look, I disagree with Barack Obama at every conceivable political level at the time, but you know what? It's a great story about the fact that America was a propositional nation. It was a story that this weird guy, and he was a little bit weird, who had this weirdly mixed background, a multiracial background, multi-ethnic background, that could become the president of the United States. And there should be something about that that lifts people up. that makes people smile, that makes people feel good about the world. It's like I can disagree, and I fervently do, with a lot of the stuff Ilhan Omar says, but you know what? Someone who escaped from Somalia as a baby and came to America and made something of herself and got elected to Congress, that is the part of that story of this propositional nation. But what you're going to hear at CPAC this week, as you did last year with Viktor Orban, you're going to hear Kari Lake say that our democracy is broken because the election was stolen from her, which is just as ludicrous as it was when Trump claimed it. You're going to hear Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're going to hear Matt Gaetz. You're going to hear Donald Trump again, being the loudest voice to say that American democracy is a fraud unless he wins.
Yeah, I mean, the whole relationship between citizen and government changes in their formulation. And for Ronald Reagan to be born an American is to have won life's lottery. And there are some Americans, not that everybody was equal, but you are not disadvantaged in life by having been born in America.
Right.
You go to Trump, and we're victims. Mm-hmm. We're chumps of these powerful forces out there like Canada that are taking advantage of us. And he's going to go out and even the store for us suckers. And there are these, rich countries that have been taking advantage of us. And it ignores the fact that America is the wealthiest country in the world, that America is the greatest, largest economy, greatest military. I mean, none of it jives with the facts. And because it doesn't jive with the facts, they have to lie. They have to create an alternative reality that we're being invaded from the South, that your vote has been stolen. And look at COVID. They did this during COVID. I mean, how many people died because of Fox News when they were out there calling it a hoax, when they were pushing these crackpot remedies?
Right.
And it's a fundamental, and every one of them, as you've said many times, was out like being first in line to get vaccinated. Every one of them. I mean, I can guarantee you Rupert Murdoch was getting his concierge doctor to come to his apartment, and vaccinate him.
There is no doubt in my mind about that. And for all the ivermectin, this and that, I guarantee you, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, every one of those goons in the morning, they're all fully vaccinated and fully boosted, because the Fox corporate rule at their headquarters was you have to be vaccinated
and masked.
And masked. All this bullshit, all this professional wrestling of their objections to it. It's just part of this culture of lying and this culture of profound deception. And the downside of it is it really reflects who the Republican Party is now. Just as the CPAC of my younger days and your younger days was, and look, there were always factions at CPAC. There were the more libertarian, deregulation people, and there were the evangelicals, social conservative types. But it was this sort of broadly representative sample of the GOP. And somebody asked me about this today. I'm like, no, it still is. Because now it looks like the Star Wars bar scene. And it's full of people who are cultishly devoted to Donald Trump. And the only people, folks, by the way, I think Stuart will agree with me on this, the only people who really think Donald Trump is gone, that he's out of the picture, that his day is past, are Washington journalists and billionaire Republican donors. They're the only people that think that. There's a clip of Kilmeade today, or one of the Fox goons, in a diner, and he really expected Ron DeSantis was going to get hey! And everybody's like, no, I'm with Trump. I'm with Trump. I mean, come on, guys.
Look, I lay the blame of this whole thing on not that Trump lied, not that these people, but that all these good Republicans, all these people that you and I helped elect, they all knew 48 hours after this election that they had lost. They had all won and lost elections. Most of them had given concession speeches graciously. Mm-hmm. And yet, to defend democracy, they couldn't get their comm shop to put out a statement congratulating the president-elect of the United States. I
Yeah,
mean,
it took
well, because
it.
what's it going to matter? What harm's it going to do? Well, they
Right,
end up running for their lives in their own office. That's what fucking harm it can do.
right, right.
And
And it took Mitch McConnell until after January 6th to acknowledge that Joe Biden was the legitimate president. These
yeah,
people live in fear of this base audience. And folks, if you went to CPAC back in the day, you would have seen a bunch of young Republicans, a lot of what I call the red suspender, red tie crowd of my generation. Um, I call it the conservative rumspringa. It's where young Republicans used to go to mate, and now it's where QAnon people, the Proud Boys, the crazies, Viktor Orban, a wannabe dictator or actual dictator from Eastern Europe, the Bannon types, the edge cases from conservative talk radio and podcasting, the guys who think like, oh, Alex Jones he's been compromised by the deep state. He's a disinformation agent now. These people at CPAC now are so fucking bizarre, so weird at every level. We're gonna have some stuff over at Lincoln Project side of the equation later this week on the freak show at CPAC. But you there's nothing. The last time I went was 16, and it had already become like this bizarre experience. But you won't see the things that there's no policy left, right, Stuart? I mean, it's all just rage machine.
no, it's 100% no policy. I mean, that's part of the reason they lost the 22 election because
Mm-hmm.
it what were you voting for except you didn't want to elect the Democrats? I mean, I've said this before. That's how cartels operate.
Right.
Nobody asked a narco cartel, like, what do you really believe in? Well, they believe in selling dope and making money. And the Republican Party believes in beating Democrats and being in power.
Right.
And, this is ultimately all about race because Trump's coalition was 85% white in a country that's 60% white and less so since we've been talking.
Right.
And, they had a choice that they could have gone and they could have done the hard work necessary to try to appeal to more African Americans, which is a consistent failure that we had ever since 64. Or
Yep.
you could decide that if we can't change how many people and who is voting, we can change how we go about the system. And
Right.
that's exactly what they're about. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
and
it
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 should
is
be
a
taken
pure.
very seriously. It's hard to talk about this without sounding alarmist. But
Yeah,
this
but as you
is,
always say, the biggest danger is not talking about the biggest danger.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so we have a question from the audience. If Fox is following the base, where will the base take us in the coming year? How do we stop this shit? There's a cliff over that way. They're going to go over that cliff. They're going to go over that cliff, and they're going to plunge into the deepest pit of conspiracy and crazy talk that you've ever seen. And all the wish casting from Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence and Ron DeSantis and everybody else, they're all going to be noise in the background of the Trump machine sucking back into all that Fox, 24/7 coverage. The president took a crap this morning. My God, let's go to so and so and talk about how great it was. They're gonna go back into the Trump bubble. That's my prediction. I already think they're starting to make the turn, even though Rupert doesn't want them to. They're starting to make the turn, and I think it is the coming year is going to get much louder and much worse.
Yeah. I mean, look at Nikki Haley. She's in a bidding war with Ron DeSantis over, this pressing problem in our society about like gay kids.
Right.
And, she's saying, I don't think that we shouldn't, he says like the third grade, we shouldn't mention sex or something. She goes, well, that's way too much. I don't know, man. I don't know why we would do it in the third grade. I mean, it's like, I think this is politically all the stuff they're saying in a general election. It's just deadly. You're out there, you're Ron DeSantis, you're attacking
Ugh.
uh, you know, uh, courses that people take so that they
I'm,
can get in better colleges.
right. You kill the AP system in Florida, and here's and I know I'm obsessing about this one particular issue. They're banning books. Basically, the state has given radical parents groups like Moms for Liberty the ability to go in and tell schools, you can't teach these books. You have to take them out of the library, including a biography of Rosa Parks, you know, that radical, dangerous African American terrorist leader who no one should learn about, obviously, because it would give them ideas about sitting at the back of the bus. I mean, it is so absurd.
Yeah, so play that out. So you do that for, 10 years or so, and you're taking the ACT course and the SAT course, and you ask a question about Rosa Parks.
Sure.
Odds are you ain't going to get it.
Right.
And, it's why I think it's such a wrong. How many parents do we know have organized their lives to get in better school districts or saved every day of their adult life?
Believe me, this is a conversation that everybody knows somebody who's either having it or has had it, where the way people express their love for their children in our society is to try to help them get the very best education they can. Because, all the things that used to be like the scary material things are less worrisome in modern day America. Your child's pretty much not going to get dysentery and die. Your child's pretty much not going to get trampled by farm animals. But your child getting into a good school has become the thing parents just absolutely focus on the most. And Ron DeSantis doing this in Florida, and the rabbit hole is so much deeper than just banning books and banning AP courses and banning AP African American history. They're taking over there's a bill in the Florida legislature right now taking over the entire Florida higher education system, basically making every decision at the schools, including tenure, governance, content, courses, by the politically appointed boards of those schools. They're all going to be Republicans. They're all going to be far-right Christian Nats. And they're going to go into schools and say, no, you're not allowed to teach about African-American history because that's CRT. And people say, no, it's not. It's history. They're going to say, no, our mandate is to say no to you. So they're going to reduce the value of an education in the state of Florida. And they're going to reduce, and part of this, like the African-American stuff, I think is going to be, I think you talked about this. Eventually, if you're like a young kid who gets recruited to play football you can go to Georgia or you can go to Florida, and in Florida, your whole life is going to be erased historically. Probably going to go to Georgia.
Yeah, then it starts to get serious. As I said many times,
once the SEC's involved,
the way in my home state, the way finally we took down the Mississippi state flag, which was the Confederate battle flag. It wasn't that it sort of had elements of it. It was the Confederate battle flag. The way that it finally got voted to take down is when every coach at every major school, historically black, University of Mississippi, all of them, Jackson State, all the coaches held a press conference and said, we have to take this flag down because it's hurting recruiting.
Right.
And then it was like, well, shit. I mean, slavery, this has gotten, slavery, okay, but this has gotten serious, I just keep going back to the parallels to the Soviet Union and to totalitarian states. You have to erase history.
Yeah.
You have to rewrite history. And this is what Putin is doing with Ukraine. And there's never been a Ukraine. And it's an essential element of this. Timothy Snyder goes on this whole brilliant sort of conceit of the difference between the politics of inevitability and the politics of eternity. And we grew up in the politics of inevitability. That was America is going to become better. And that's true of Ronald Reagan. It's certainly true of Barack Obama. And it has been replaced now on the Republican side by the politics of eternity, that the struggle is everything, that we know it's never really going to get better. So you look at Trump, you read his inaugural address, everything that he said he was going to do is a total failure. And he left office more popular with Republicans than when he went in.
Correct.
Why?
Even after trying to burn down the government.
Well, that was proof that validated voting for Trump, because you voted for Trump because you knew the system was corrupt. And then the system was so corrupt, they stole the election from him.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
if Donald Trump can't fix this, nobody can. We have to go to a different system. And that's what they're
it,
about.
yep. Andrew Delph, who is one of our listeners, says conned people are coming. CPAC, CPAC. Exactly. You know, the CPAC is under a bit of under the gun a bit this year since its founder or not founder, but its CEO Matt Schlapp has been accused of sexual assault, which is odd because they're the ones who scream groomers, pedophiles, and flip out about anything gay at the drop of a hat, and yet they seem to just ignore it. It seems like he's just breezing through it.
Well, look, I mean, when you elect a president who you hear him on tape bragging about assaulting women sexually,
Right.
he assaulted a guy. I mean, it really, once you sort of accept that, you know, once you decide the character doesn't matter.
Right. Once the bracket's down that far, you're like, ah,
I mean, it's like, oh well, it doesn't. What was the thing that we always said that the character was everything, and
right.
they went the character counts. I mean, so now they've gone to all the stuff you heard during Trump. We're not electing a preacher. We're not electing. It's like, how did this happen? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a complete collapse of any kind of moral structure to a party. And, I mean, these culture wars they're fighting, I think, are losing battles. I think the majority of people are on the other side of these culture wars.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we talked about this before. If I ran the Democratic Party, I'd wake up every day trying to get in culture wars.
It's interesting because I was talking to a pollster today who works with us, and he was basically saying to me, he goes, a lot of people are reading Dobbs the wrong way. A lot of the people that are mad about it were Republicans who had basically accepted it. They didn't have to love it. They didn't necessarily love Roe v. Wade. They might not have even chosen to get an abortion, but the fact that it was part of the terrain. The cultural revolution on the right means you're tearing apart all these things that are institutional. And look, they're coming for gay marriage next. There's no question about it. Next, the next big thing on their agenda is gay marriage. DeSantis had some people this year. They backed away from it in Florida. They were considering a bill to unwind gay adoption in Florida, or to impose such a background check that it would essentially say, well, you can adopt a child if you're gay unless you've ever had any kind of sex in any kind of homosexual relationship or behavior, because that's a culture where they lost. They lost it. They lost it in a way that was so fast that, I mean, look, I was publicly for pro-gay marriage before Barack Obama was, because I never thought it was the government's business.
Mm-hmm.
But those culture wars that they've lost have really broken them mentally. And gay marriage is one of them, and abortion was the other. Well, abortion, let's say they fought to a draw. We had an uncomfortable compromise in the country, but by blowing up Roe with Dobbs, they seem like the radicals now in the minds of voters who are not hyper acutely following every single twist and turn of Washington policy fights.
And look, there's a reason when those three judges that Trump appointed, when they went out and said that they considered Roe settled law. Is that the phrase they used?
Yep.
There is a fine distinction that lawyers explain to me why that's not perjury. But everybody thought that what they were saying is what they were attempting to convey, which is they weren't going to overturn Roe v. Wade. And the reason they said that is they knew they wouldn't get confirmed if they said that they were. So again, I mean, you have we're in this era now of minority rule, minority opinions. And that is something that they're about the business of solidifying.
And eliminating the need. They want to eliminate the need to fight about these things. They just want to ignore it. I mean, if you look at DeSantis in Florida, he is a preview, folks. And one other thing, the reason Ron DeSantis is not going to CPAC The reason he's hiding out from CPAC and pretending to do any other thing in the world, he's got to wash his hair that night, is he's terrified. He knows the base is still with Trump by and large, and he's curated this very careful image of a tough guy. I'm a winner. Nobody gets in my way. I'm tough. I'm the big bully. You do something I don't like, and I'm going to punch you. The reality is he's hiding from CPAC because he's terrified of Trump winning the straw poll. Like a lot of bullies, the guy gets hit in the nose one time, and he's going to go down, hard.
Yeah, I mean, I'll know that somebody's serious. I mean, we've talked about this. We both agree on this. We'll know that somebody's serious when they announce for president ripping the shit out of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And saying, look, you know he was a failure. You know we couldn't have, we know we went in the wrong direction.
Yep.
And they're willing to stick to that and believe it. And they're willing to lose on that.
And I will tell whoever that candidate is, I don't know who it is. I mean, Asa Hutchinson has sort of poked his nose in it a little bit, but not with that level. Whoever that candidate is, you'll probably get your ass handed to you, but you will sleep great at night because we do. Trust us. It is a different world once you don't feel constrained by, I've got to stick with the party or it's communism.
Well, I mean, look, Reagan ran 3 times. I mean, if I really wanted to believe this, I would say, look, the path of conservatism was you had to lose. You had to lose with Goldwater, and then you had to come forward. So I would say that if you had a candidate, and Asa Hutchinson was a client of mine, I have a soft spot for him. But if
I like Asa,
Asa is a very decent person. You can disagree with him on this or that, but he's a good person. But if you go out and you run and you lose this time, you can't look at these polls to remind you of your deeply held beliefs. You have to be willing to go out and do this, and maybe you'll win next time, maybe you won't. But why go through everything that's involved in running for president? Which, I mean, these people that are getting in it have no idea what they're about to go through.
None.
And their staffs have no idea what they're about to go through.
And, it's Stuart. That's something I had not really thought about. You just made a very interesting point, because a lot of the people around these candidates were from what I call the before times. They are very conventional. I mean, if you were to take Donald Trump out of the picture, Nikki Haley's announcement was very generically Republican presidential. The big rally, the short film.
She announced like Elizabeth Dole announced.
Right. There was that could have come out of 1996 or 2000.
Yeah.
And their staff are largely professionals, largely guys, like we were, Republican operatives who went out into the world and helped candidates get elected. And the conventionality of all of them right now, the caution, the small ball, it's all relying on this illusion that, Trump will screw up and then I'll be the one. It is such a 2015 conceit. I mean, it's exactly what everyone from Chris Christie on down said in 2016. I mean, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Chris Christie, Carly Fiorina, every single one of them said, well, Trump's going to screw up. He's going to say something like, I don't know, John McCain wasn't a war hero, or grab him by the pussy or whatever. And he'll collapse, and then I'll take his place.
Make fun of a disabled reporter.
Yeah. Instead of, banning all Muslims. Okay, that's going to work out for you. But it's going to be, folks, over at Lincoln, you'll see a lot of our CPAC summaries this week. They're going to be as insane as you can imagine. We've got a question from Roxanne. I'll answer this first. We'll do a couple questions. Who do you guys think Trump and DeSantis will pick as running mates? Well, I can tell you one thing, Trump's not picking Mike Pence again. So who do you think, Stuart, is the sort of dream date for Donald Trump as a running mate?
I would say Lake. You got 2 people from television who are pathological liars. who both, won elections and were denied by a crooked system.
Yeah, and she's undeniably got a certain, like, she's good with the camera.
Yeah.
She eye fucks that camera like nobody's business.
She
Um,
she knows her way around a gauzy filter.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, she does.
and, you know, she will be forever loyal.
Yeah,
And, Trump is a criminal organization. So you rise not based upon your ability, but based upon your loyalty. And
right.
that's when you look at how he staffed the White House with, these people that were around campaigns. It's not like people, like Lewandowski or any of these people woke up and said, I'd like to get involved in presidential politics in 2015. They always were trying to get involved in politics. Nobody would
All
let them in.
all the window lickers,
I
as
mean,
somebody said.
yeah. Yeah, it just Kellyanne. I mean, they're trying to get in forever, but people are like, "Are you crazy? I wouldn't share a cab with that person."
Right.
And then Trump let them in,
Mm-hmm.
and he rewarded them based upon their loyalty. So then they would be loyal. Steve Bannon. I mean, Steve Bannon was calling me in 2004, trying to get involved with making a convention film.
Of course he was.
I
Of
mean,
course he was.
give me a break. It's like,
Yeah.
what? What?
I just think, look, DeSantis, for who knows who DeSantis's VP would be at this point, but he's all in on a culture war, and I think he's so far all in on it that he would have to pick somebody to soften that edge just a little bit, but I don't know who it would be.
I think they like the look of that debate stage
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
between a very white woman and the first woman of color to be vice president.
Yeah.
I think that that would be just like a fantasy for them come true.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, folks, listen, it's going to be a long week at CPAC. We're glad you joined us tonight for this conversation about a little bit about CPAC, but the Fox story really is one of the bigger things. Stuart, as always, my brother, it is wonderful to talk to you. And folks, if you go over to resolutesquare.com, you can sign up for our free newsletters. I write there. Stuart writes there. A lot of folks who are brilliant thinkers about freedom and democracy have joined Resolute Square as contributors and authors. And we really encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. Each week you'll get exclusive content from amazing writers. I'd also like to encourage you to join us and listen to The Trippy Show, Joe Trippy's podcast, Burn the Boats, Ken Harbaugh's podcast, and Modestly Speaking, The Enemies List, my podcast, all at Resolute Square. So folks, thank you. Have a great night, and we'll see you again next week.
See you guys.